Welcome to the world of HFY sci-fi tales. I'm Alien Whispers, your storyteller. Picture a moment where a human's voice, steady as iron, speaks a name that binds two souls across the stars, while a newborn's cry echoes in a war-torn outpost, heralding a future no empire could foresee. This isn't just a tale of survival. It's a testament to humanity's defiance, love's quiet strength, and a choice that reshapes galaxies. As the drop pod burned through the atmosphere, Commander Elias Vark's thoughts weren't on the stars blurring past, but on the alien beside him, her jest about names hiding a truth neither could yet grasp. The drop pod screamed through the outer ring's disputed skies, its hull glowing cherry red from atmospheric friction. Inside, the cockpit was a claustrophobic cocoon of flickering consoles and recycled air. Commander Elias Vark, a Terran Alliance veteran with a jaw carved from stubborn resolve, gripped the co-pilot controls. His dark eyes scanned the readouts, but his attention kept drifting to Sylvara, the alien woman beside him. Her skin shimmered a deep emerald, smooth and luminous, catching the emergency lighting like polished jade. Her hair, a cascade of midnight blue braided intricately, swayed as she adjusted the navigation with fluid precision. She was a Klytheran, a species known for their grace and cryptic traditions, and her presence filled the cramped space with an electric undercurrent. "Your human names are so pedestrian," Sylvara said, her voice a melodic lilt that carried a teasing edge. She glanced at Elias, her golden eyes glinting with mischief. Tom, Jack, Sarah, dull as asteroid dust. Her combat suit, a sleek weave of Klytheran tech, hugged her curves, leaving strategic panels open at her waist and shoulders, a design Elias had learned was both cultural and tactical, amplifying her agility. Elias raised an eyebrow, his stubbled face betraying a flicker of amusement. His black tactical vest strained slightly over his broad chest as he leaned back. "And Klytheran names are what? Poetry in motion." His baritone held just enough sarcasm to make her lips twitch. "Let me guess, your name's a symphony of starlight or some such." Their banter was a fragile bridge over the professional distance they'd maintained. As envoys on this joint reconnaissance mission, delivering routine supplies to a Terran Klytheran outpost, they were diplomats first, soldiers second. Yet the air between them crackled with unspoken attraction, a tension neither acknowledged but both felt. Sylvara's gaze lingered on the desert planet below, its crimson dunes stretching under a violet sky. "My true name," she said, her tones softening, "is a vibration of the cosmos, sung at my birth. It binds my soul to the stars." She turned, her expression daring. "By Klytheran law, if a male guesses it, I'm his forever. Care to try, human?" Elias's lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile. Something in his eyes, a glint of knowing, made Sylvara's confidence falter. Without breaking her gaze, he spoke a sound no human should have produced, a layered melody, rising and falling like a comet's arc, resonant with the harmonics of a Klytheran true name. The cockpit seemed to hum with its echo. Sylvara's eyes widened, her emerald skin flushing a deeper green. "Ow," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pod's rumble. "How do you know that?" The question hung unanswered as proximity alarms shattered the moment. Elias snapped to the controls, his playfulness gone. "Unidentified craft, 3 o'clock," he barked. Sylvara's fingers flew across her console, her shock buried under professionalism. "No recognition codes. Pirates or worse." The pod shuddered as Elias banked hard, the desert rushing closer. "Draxians?" he asked, naming the hostile species notorious for raiding these sectors. "Likely," Sylvara replied, her voice tight. "They'd kill for our cargo." Her eyes flicked to the secure compartment beneath her seat, a silent acknowledgement that their routine supplies were anything but. Elias pushed the pod into a dive, the G-forces pinning them to their seats. "Hold on," he said, his tone grim. "This just got complicated." Sylvara's heart raced, not just from the chase, but from the dawning realization that Elias's knowledge of her true name was no mere guess. It hinted at a hidden past that could unravel their mission. As the pod skimmed over jagged canyons, Elias remained steady, his calm transforming impossible odds into a challenge he could meet. Their bond, sparked by a jest, was already deepening, and the stars above seemed to watch, waiting for what came next. The drop pod's engines roared as Elias pushed the craft to its limits, weaving through the canyon's jagged spires under a violet sky. Sylvara's emerald skin gleamed with a faint sheen of sweat, her golden eyes locked on the tactical display. The pursuing ships, sleek, predatory Draxian interceptors, closed in, their weapons charging with an ominous hum. Her fingers danced across the console, rerouting power to shields, but her mind churned with the impossible. Elias had spoken her true name, a Klytheran secret no outsider could know. The memory of his voice, melodic and precise, sent a shiver through her, equal parts awe and unease. 2 interceptors locking on, she reported, forcing focus. They're herding us toward the open desert. Elias's jaw tightened, his hands steady on the controls. Not today, he muttered, banking the pod sharply into a narrow ravine. The walls closed in, rock faces blurring past, but his precision held, a testament to years of instinct honed in battle. Sylvara stole a glance at him, his dark hair damp against his forehead, his broad shoulders taut under the tactical vest. He was human, yet he'd unraveled a piece of her soul with a single sound. "How did you do it?" she asked, the words slipping out despite the chaos. Elias didn't look at her, his eyes fixed on the canyon's twists. Later, he said, voice low but firm, "We survived first." A missile warning blared, and he yanked the controls, the pod spiraling to dodge a fiery streak that grazed their hull. Sylvara braced herself, her Klytheran reflexes syncing with his maneuvers. Their partnership, tense but effective, had carried them through missions before, but this felt different, personal, charged with the weight of what he'd done. The ravine widened, revealing a sprawling desert under twin suns. Elias scanned the horizon, then pointed to a shadowed crevice beneath an overhanging cliff. "They are magnetic deposits. They'll scramble their sensors." Sylvara nodded, impressed despite herself. "Good call. The ferroresonance should mask us." He guided the pod into the crevice with a finesse that belied its battered state, the engines whining as they powered down. Darkness enveloped them, the only light the faint glow of their consoles and Sylvara's skin, now a deeper emerald in the dimness. Silence settled, heavy with unspoken questions. The tactical display showed the Draxian ships circling above, their scans sweeping the desert. "They'll tire eventually," Sylvara said, her voice quieter now. "Pirates don't linger for hard targets." Elias leaned back, his breath steadying, but his eyes met hers, dark and unreadable. "Not pirates. Draxians don't chase routine supply runs for sport. Whatever's in that cargo, it's worth killing for." Sylvara's gaze flicked to the secure compartment beneath her seat. She'd been told it held medical supplies for the outpost, but Elias's words stirred doubt. Her Klytheran upbringing demanded loyalty to her counsel, yet the human beside her had just upended her understanding of trust. "You're dodging my question," she said, her tone sharper. "My true name. How did you know it?" Elias hesitated, then leaned forward, elbows on his knees. 5 years ago, I was on a covert op at Klytheran Prime. Security detail for a Terran delegation. His voice was low, as if the memory carried weight. "Your mother performed a naming right at a summit. She spoke your true name as a blessing for peace. I heard it once." Sylvara's breath caught. Klytheran true names were sacred, their harmonics impossible for human ears to parse. "That's not possible," she said, her voice trembling. "You couldn't. I'm not standard issue." Elias cut in, his tone matter-of-fact. He tapped his temple. "Neural augments. Terran Black Ops program. Enhanced auditory range. Perfect recall. I can hear frequencies most humans can't, and reproduce them." The revelation landed like a shockwave. Sylvara stared, her cultural reverence for natural purity clashing with fascination. To her people, such modifications were taboo, a violation of the soul's harmony. Yet Elias spoke of it with quiet pride, a human embracing his altered self to bridge their worlds. "You knew what it meant," she said, accusation lacing her words. "The binding. Why speak it now?" Elias's expression softened, a rare vulnerability flickering across his face. "I didn't plan to. Your challenge, it caught me off guard. The name just came out." He met her gaze, unflinching. "But I don't regret it." The air between them thickened, the hum of the pod's systems fading into the background. Sylvara's heart pounded, her Klytheran instincts warring with the pull she felt toward him. The binding was more than law. It was a spiritual tether tying their fates. Yet it was his human defiance, his willingness to face her challenge head-on, that stirred something deeper. She leaned closer, her braided hair brushing his arm. "You've bound us, Elias Vark. Do you even understand what that means?" Before he could answer, the display pinged. A Draxian ship veering too close. Elias snapped to attention, powering up minimal systems. "They're persistent," he muttered, his focus razor-sharp. Sylvara mirrored him, her hands steady despite the storm in her chest. The moment of truth would wait, but the crevice's shadows couldn't hide the shift between them. Elias's augments were no mere tool. They were a bridge to her world, a human's audacity to reach beyond his limits. As the Draxian ship passed overhead, its scans missing their sanctuary, Sylvara realized the true danger wasn't the enemy outside. It was the cargo's secret, locked beneath her seat. Elias's instincts were right. This wasn't about supplies. The Klytheran Council had chosen her for this mission, paired her with a human for reasons they hadn't shared. The realization tightened her resolve. Whatever they were carrying, it tied to her, to Elias, and to the name that now bound them. The crevice's shadows clung to the drop pod, its hull cooling in the desert's twilight chill. Elias Vark monitored the tactical display, his dark eyes tracking the Draxian interceptors as they looped above, their scans slicing through the dunes. The magnetic deposits held, cloaking their signature, but the enemy's persistence gnawed at him. Sylvara sat opposite, her emerald skin catching the console's faint glow, her midnight blue braids still except for the occasional twitch of her fingers. The silence between them was a taut wire, strung with the weight of her true name and the cargo's unspoken truth. "They're not leaving," Elias said, his voice low, breaking the quiet. "Whatever we're carrying, it's got them desperate." He glanced at the secure compartment beneath Sylvara's seat, its sleek Klytheran design out of place among the pod's utilitarian fittings. Sylvara's golden eyes met his, a flicker of unease betraying her composed facade. "We need to move," she said, her melodic voice steady despite the tension. "They'll widen their search grid soon." Elias nodded, plotting a course through the canyons. "There's a secondary route to the outpost, less exposed. Risky, but it'll keep us off their scopes." He powered up the engines, the pod humming to life. As they eased out of the crevice, the desert stretched before them, its crimson sands gilded by the setting suns. Sylvara adjusted the shields, her movements precise but distracted, her mind clearly elsewhere. The pod skimmed low, hugging the canyon walls. Elias's hands were steady, his augmented senses attuned to every vibration, every shift in the air. His calm was no act. It was the human grit that had carried him through a decade of war zones, the same resilience that let him face a Klytheran warrior's challenge without flinching. Sylvara watched him, her cultural disdain for modification softening. His augments weren't just tools. They were proof of humanity's relentless drive to adapt, to survive. A sudden jolt rocked the pod, a plasma bolt grazing their starboard side. "They found us!" Sylvara shouted, her console flashing red. Two Draxian interceptors dropped from above, their angular hulls glinting like predators' teeth. Elias cursed under his breath, yanking the controls into a spiraling dive. The pod groaned, its frame straining as he threaded it through a narrow pass, rock faces scraping the hull. "Hold on!" he barked, his voice cutting through the alarms. Sylvara rerouted power to the rear shields, her Klytheran reflexes a blur. "They're locking missiles," she warned, her tone sharp but controlled. Elias's mind raced, calculating angles and distances. The canyon widened ahead, offering no cover, a death trap. But a glint of inspiration struck. He spotted a cluster of mineral spires, their ferroresonant cores pulsing faintly. "Sylvara, overload the auxiliary emitter." "Now." She hesitated, then understood. Her fingers flew across the controls, channeling excess energy into the pod's sensor array. The emitter pulsed, sending a false signal that mimicked their signature toward the spires. The Draxian missiles veered, slamming into the mineral cluster in a deafening explosion. Shrapnel rained down, but Elias was already banking the pod into a side ravine, the blast shockwave masking their escape. The interceptors hesitated, their scans disrupted by the spire's resonance. Elias pushed the pod deeper into the labyrinthine canyons, the walls closing in like a vice. Sylvara exhaled, her emerald skin paling slightly. "That was reckless," she said, a hint of admiration in her voice. Elias flashed a grin, his stubble catching the console's light. "Reckless is my middle name. Didn't I tell you?" Her lips twitched, a reluctant smile breaking through. "You're insufferable." But the moment passed as her gaze hardened, returning to the compartment. "We can't keep running blind. You're right about the cargo. It's not what they told me." She leaned forward, her braids swaying. "I was briefed on medical supplies, but the council, they were too specific about you as my partner." Elias's brow furrowed, his hands still on the controls. "Me? What?" Sylvara's fingers hovered over the compartment's lock, then withdrew. "I don't know. But your augments, your presence, it's not random. They wanted us together." The implication hung heavy, tying back to the binding, to the name he'd spoken. Elias's jaw tightened, a flicker of anger crossing his face. "If they're playing us, they'll regret it." The pod emerged into a wider canyon, the outpost's silhouette faint on the horizon, its domes glinting under the stars. But the display pinged again. One interceptor had broken off, but the other was back, closing fast. Sylvara's hands froze on her console. "It's not scanning us," she said, her voice tight. "It's broadcasting to the outpost." Elias's stomach dropped. The Draxians weren't just hunting them. They were coordinating an attack. The outpost, their destination, was a trap waiting to spring. He pushed the engines harder, the pod shuddering. "We're walking into a firefight," he said, his tone grim. "Any bright ideas?" Sylvara's eyes narrowed, her Klytheran pride surfacing. "We fight smart. Disable their comms array before they signal reinforcements." She pulled up a schematic of the interceptor's design, her tactical mind kicking in. "A precision strike to their dorsal relay. I can guide the shot if you get us close." Elias nodded, impressed by her resolve. "Close it is." He banked the pod upward, climbing to meet the interceptor head-on. The move was bold, suicidal even, but it was their only chance to reach the outpost alive. As the enemy ship loomed, its weapons charging, Sylvara's voice cut through the tension. "Elias, if we don't make it." "We will," he interrupted, his tone leaving no room for doubt. The pod surged forward, the canyon walls falling away. The Draxian ship fired, a plasma barrage lighting the sky. Elias dodged, his augments sharpening his reflexes, but the real danger lay ahead. The outpost was already burning, its defenses crumbling under an unseen assault. Sylvara's realization that the council had engineered their pairing shifted her trust not just in Elias but in her own purpose. Their survival hinged on his ingenuity, a human's knack for turning the tables on overwhelming odds. As the pod closed in, the stars above seemed to pulse, echoing the bond that tied them, a melody of defiance against a galaxy that sought to control them. The drop pod streaked through the canyon's twilight, its hull scorched from near misses as the Draxian interceptor loomed ahead, a predatory shadow against the violet sky. Elias Vark's hands gripped the controls, his dark eyes narrowed with focus. The outpost's distant domes flickered with bursts of weapons fire, confirming his worst fears. They were flying into a war zone. Beside him, Sylvara's emerald skin shimmered under the console's glow, her midnight blue braids swaying as she fine-tuned the targeting system. Her golden eyes were locked on the interceptor schematic, her voice steady despite the chaos. Dorsal relays exposed if we hit it from below. Give me a clear shot. Elias nodded, banking the pod into a steep climb. You got it. The G-forces pressed them into their seats, the pod's frame groaning as he angled beneath the enemy ship. Plasma bolts rained down, one grazing their port side, sending sparks across the cockpit. Sylvara didn't flinch, her Klytheran precision guiding the weapon's lock. Now, she called, firing a pulse burst that struck the interceptor's relay in a shower of molten fragments. The enemy ship veered, its comms silenced, but it wasn't out of the fight. They're still on us, Elias muttered, diving back into the canyon's maze. The outpost was closer now, its perimeter lights flickering through clouds of smoke. Sylvara's fingers hesitated over the console, her earlier words echoing in her mind. The Klytheran Council had chosen Elias deliberately. The cargo's secret, her true name, their binding. It was all connected, and the answers lay in the compartment beneath her seat. She glanced at Elias, his stubbled jaw set, his human resilience a quiet force that steadied her. We need to know what we're carrying, she said, her voice low but urgent. Before we reach the outpost. Elias's eyes flicked to her, then to the compartment. Agreed. But we're not cracking it open mid-firefight. He jerked the controls, dodging another barrage as the interceptor regained its bearings. The canyon narrowed, forcing him to thread the pod through a gap barely wider than their wingspan. Rocks scraped the hull, but he held course, his augmented senses mapping every twist. Sylvara marveled at his calm, a stark contrast to her people's reverence for calculated harmony. Humans, she realized, thrived in chaos, their defiance a spark that lit the impossible. The interceptor fired again, a missile streaking toward them. Elias banked hard, the pod skimming a cliff face, but the missile clipped their rear, sending them into a spin. Alarms blared, and Sylvara braced herself, her heart pounding. Shield's critical, she shouted, rerouting power. Elias wrestled the controls, stabilizing the pod just above a jagged outcrop. There, he said, pointing to a shadowed alcove carved into the canyon wall, its mineral veins pulsing faintly. Magnetic interference, same as before. He guided the pod into the alcove, the engines powering down with a whine. Darkness enveloped them, the interceptor's scans passing harmlessly overhead. The cockpit's dim lighting cast Sylvara's emerald skin in soft relief, her golden eyes searching Elias's face. We can't keep running, she said, her voice tight. The outpost is under attack, and whatever's in that compartment is why. She reached for the lock, her fingers trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of betrayal. Her counsel had lied to her. Elias placed a hand over hers, his touch warm against her cooler skin. We do this together, he said, his baritone steady. No secrets. Sylvara nodded, entering the access code. The compartment slid open, revealing not medical supplies, but a sleek stasis unit, its surface etched with Klytheran runes. Inside, vials of iridescent fluid glowed, their light dancing across the cockpit. Genetic stabilizers, Sylvara whispered, her voice hollow. For hybrid reproduction. Elias's brow furrowed, his tactical mind piecing it together. Hybrid? As in, Sylvara's gaze dropped, her emerald skin flushing darker. Klytheran human. The Council's been experimenting with cross-species genetics. They selected me because I'm compatible. Her voice cracked, the word carrying a weight she hadn't anticipated. With you. The revelation hit Elias like a shockwave. His hand tightened on hers, not in anger, but in resolve. They set us up, he said, his tone hard. The mission, the pairing, none of it was chance. Sylvara nodded, her golden eyes meeting his. They didn't tell me the full truth, only that the stabilizers were critical for the outpost. But this, she gestured to the vials. This is about us, about what we could create. The alcove's silence was suffocating, broken only by the hum of the pod's systems. Elias's mind raced, connecting the Draxian attack to the cargo. The Draxians know, he said. That's why they're hitting the outpost. They want to stop this program. Sylvara's braid swayed as she leaned closer, her voice fierce. Or steal it. A hybrid could shift the balance of power. Our child. She stopped, her skin paling as the implications sank in. Elias's expression softened, a flicker of something deeper crossing his face. Our child, he repeated, testing the words. The binding, sparked by her true name, had already tied their fates, but this was a choice neither had foreseen. He reached out, brushing a stray braid from her face, his touch grounding her. Whatever they planned, Sylvara, we decide what happens next. A distant explosion rattled the alcove, the tactical display flashing as the interceptor circled back, joined by a second ship. Sylvara snapped to attention, her warrior instincts overriding her shock. They're closing in, she said, powering up the weapons. Elias restarted the engines, his resolve hardening. We get to the outpost. We protect those stabilizers and each other. As the pods surged from the alcove, the Draxian ships locked on, their weapons blazing. Elias's defiance, his refusal to bow to manipulation, ignited a spark in Sylvara. The Council's betrayal had shaken her, but his loyalty steadied her, a human stubborn heart proving stronger than any genetic design. The outpost loomed, its flames a beacon of danger and truth, and Sylvara knew their fight was no longer just for survival. It was for the future they'd been thrust into, and the one they'd choose to forge. The drop pod tore through the canyon's twilight, its engines screaming as Elias Vark pushed it beyond its limits. The Draxian interceptors pursued relentlessly, their plasma bolts lighting the violet sky like deadly comets. Sylvara's emerald skin glistened with tension, her golden eyes darting between the tactical display and the glowing stasis unit now secured between them. The vials of genetic stabilizers, pulsing with iridescent light, were no longer just cargo. They were a declaration of a future engineered without their consent. The outpost's burning domes loomed closer, a chaotic beacon of smoke and gunfire. Outpost defenses are down, Sylvara reported, her melodic voice taut as she scanned the comms. Draxian ground forces have breached the perimeter. Elias's jaw clenched, his hands steady on the controls despite the pod's shuddering frame. We're landing hot, he said, banking toward a secondary pad shrouded in dust. Get ready to move. His dark eyes flicked to her, a silent promise in their depths. Whatever the Council had planned, he'd fight for her choice. The pod slammed onto the pad with a bone-rattling thud, its stealth systems flickering to mask their arrival. Elias unstrapped, grabbing his sidearm, while Sylvara secured the stasis unit in a tactical harness across her chest. Her Klytheran combat suit hugged her curves, its open panels revealing smooth, emerald skin that seemed to glow with resolve. We head for the central lab, she said, checking her scanner. Survivors are holed up there. Elias nodded, his tactical vest creaking as he moved to the hatch. Stay close. This place is a maze. They slipped into the outpost's emergency tunnels, the air thick with smoke and the distant clatter of combat. Sylvara's braids swayed as she moved, her Klytheran agility keeping pace with Elias's determined stride. The revelation of the hybrid program still burned in her chest, a betrayal that cut deeper than any Draxian blade. She'd been a warrior, a diplomat, proud of her service. Yet the Council had reduced her to a genetic pawn. Elias's presence, his unwavering focus, anchored her against the storm of doubt. A tremor shook the tunnel, dust raining from the ceiling. Elias raised a fist, signaling halt. Through a grate, they glimpsed Draxian soldiers, hulking, scale-covered figures with glowing red eyes, patrolling the corridor beyond. They're systematic, Elias whispered, his augmented senses picking up their guttural commands. They're after the lab. Sylvara's hand tightened on her weapon, the stabilizer's weight a constant reminder. They know about the program, she said. This isn't a raid, it's a purge. Elias's eyes narrowed, calculating. We bypassed them. Side passage to the left. He led the way, his movements silent despite his broad frame. Sylvara followed, marveling at his adaptability, a human trait that turned chaos into opportunity. The passage was narrow, its walls etched with Klytheran runes that pulsed faintly, a remnant of the outpost's joint design. Her fingers brushed one, grounding her in her heritage even as she questioned its leaders. They emerged near the central lab, its reinforced doors scarred but intact. Elias tapped the comm panel. "Commander Elias Vark, Terran Alliance. We've got your distress signal." A tense pause followed, then the door hissed open, revealing a haggard group of survivors. Commander Terran Cade, a Terran officer with a bloodied uniform, nodded grimly. Beside her stood Dr. Vera, a Klytheran scientist, her silver robes stained with blue blood. "You're late," Terran said, but relief softened her tone. Sylvara handed the stasis unit to Vera, who examined it with trembling hands. "The stabilizers," Vera breathed, her golden eyes wide. "You brought them?" Her gaze shifted to Sylvara, then Elias, a knowing look passing over her. "The binding, it's happened, hasn't it?" Sylvara's skin flushed darker, startled by the scientist's perception. "Ow! Your energies align," Vera said, her voice soft but certain. "It's unmistakable." Elias stepped closer to Sylvara, his presence a quiet shield. "Focus on the now," he said to Vera. "What's the situation?" Terran gestured to a flickering holo-display. "Draxians hit us an hour ago. They knew exactly where to strike, the genetic labs. We're holding the core, but they're closing in." Sylvara's heart sank. "The hybrid program," she said, her voice low. "They're here to destroy it." Vera's expression tightened, but she didn't deny it. "Or claim it," she said. "The data here could redefine interstellar power." Elias's hand rested on Sylvara's shoulder, a grounding touch. "Then we protect it," he said, his tone resolute. "And we get answers." But the answers came sooner than expected. Vera hesitated, then spoke, her voice heavy. "Sylvara, you weren't just chosen for compatibility. Your genetic profile was optimized from birth for this program." Sylvara froze, her emerald skin paling. "Optimized?" she echoed, the word bitter. "You mean engineered?" Vera nodded, guilt shadowing her eyes. "Your parents were selected. Your embryo altered. You're the key to a Klytheran-human hybrid, a bridge between our species." The betrayal cut deeper than Sylvara expected, her warrior's pride crumbling under the weight of manipulation. She thought her strength was her own, her choices free. Now, she was a product, a tool. Elias's hand tightened on her shoulder, his voice low. "They don't own you, Sylvara. No one does." His words, simple yet fierce, sparked a flicker of defiance in her chest. He saw her, not as a project, but as a partner, a soul bound to his. A nearby explosion rocked the lab, the holo display flashing as Draxian forces breached another barrier. Terran checked the feeds, her face grim. "They're 20 minutes out. We need a plan." Elias's tactical mind kicked in. "The auxiliary lab, reinforced, defensible. We move there, hold out for reinforcements." Vera nodded. "It has equipment to protect the stabilizers, and Sylvara." Her eyes lingered on the Klytheran, a silent apology. As they gathered supplies, Sylvara felt Elias's gaze, steady and unwavering. The Council's deception had shaken her, but his loyalty rebuilt her resolve. The Draxian attack wasn't just a threat. It was a chance to reclaim her agency, to fight for the bond she and Elias were forging. The lab's lights flickered, casting her emerald skin in stark relief, and she knew the true battle was for their future, not just survival. The outpost's auxiliary lab was a fortress of reinforced alloy, its walls etched with Klytheran runes that pulsed faintly, syncing with the hum of an independent power grid. Elias Vark stood at the entrance, sidearm in hand, his dark eyes scanning the corridor for Draxian patrols. The survivors had relocated swiftly, their footsteps echoing in the dim tunnels as they carried supplies and the precious stasis unit. Sylvara moved beside him, her emerald skin catching the emergency lighting, her midnight blue braids swaying with each step. The weight of Dr. Vera's revelation, that Sylvara had been engineered for a hybrid program, pressed on her, but Elias's presence, steady as a star, kept her grounded. Inside the lab, Commander Taryn Cade organized the survivors, her bloodied uniform a testament to the battle they'd already endured. Dr. Vera calibrated a medical scanner, her silver robes stained but her focus unbroken. The stasis unit sat on a central table, its vials glowing like captured starlight. Sylvara's hand hovered over it, her golden eyes distant. "All my life," she said softly, "I thought I was free. Now I'm a blueprint." Elias turned from the door, his tactical vest creaking as he approached. "You're more than their plans," he said, his baritone firm. "You're the one who challenged me to guess your name. That was you, not them." His words, laced with quiet conviction, stirred a spark in her chest. She met his gaze, her Klytheran pride rekindling. "You're right," she said, her voice steadier. "They don't get to decide what we become." Taryn interrupted, her voice sharp. "Sentimental moments latte. We've got maybe an hour before the Draxians breach this sector." She pointed to a holo display showing enemy movements, hulking figures advancing methodically, their red eyes glinting in the feeds. Elias studied the map, his tactical mind racing. "We fortify here," he said. "Choke points at the east and west entrances. Use the lab's power grid to rig EMP traps." His plan was bold, leveraging human ingenuity to turn the lab's tech against their foes. Vera looked up, her expression troubled. "There's something else you need to know," she said, her gaze on Sylvara. "The stabilizers aren't just for the program. They're for you, specifically." Sylvara's emerald skin paled, her braids stilling. "What do you mean?" Vera hesitated, then continued. "Your genetic modifications include an accelerated reproductive cycle. Without the stabilizers, any conception would progress too fast, dangerously so." The air grew heavy, the implications sinking in. Sylvara's hand instinctively touched her abdomen, her eyes flicking to Elias. Their binding, sparked by her true name, had already deepened their connection, but this was a new layer of manipulation. Elias's jaw tightened, a flicker of anger crossing his face. "They engineered her body without her consent," he said, his voice low, dangerous. "That ends now." Before Sylvara could respond, a tremor shook the lab, the holo display flashing as Draxian forces detonated a breach charge nearby. Taryn snapped orders, positioning survivors at defensive points, while Vera rushed to secure the stabilizers. Elias grabbed Sylvara's arm, pulling her aside. "You okay?" he asked, his dark eyes searching hers. She nodded, though her heart raced. "I'm angry," she admitted, "but I'm not fragile. We fight for us, not them." His lips curved into a faint smile, admiration clear. "That's my Klytheran." The moment was fleeting, shattered by a sudden alarm. The holo display showed a new threat, a Draxian elite squad, equipped with stealth tech, bypassing the main corridors. "They're flanking us," Taryn barked, grabbing a rifle. Elias's mind shifted to overdrive, his augmented senses picking up faint vibrations through the walls. "They're in the ventilation shafts," he said, pointing to a grate above. "Sylvara, with me." They moved as one, her Klytheran agility complementing his human resolve. Elias' pride opened the grate, revealing a narrow shaft vibrating with the clatter of approaching enemies. Sylvara drew her pulse blade, its edge humming with energy. "We take them out quietly," she whispered, her warrior instincts sharp. Elias nodded, pulling a compact EMP grenade from his vest. "On your mark." They crawled into the shaft, the air thick with metallic tang. Sylvara led, her golden eyes piercing the gloom, while Elias followed, his augmented hearing tracking the Draxians' movements. The elite squad was close, 3 soldiers, their scales glinting faintly. Sylvara signaled, and Elias tossed the grenade, its pulse disabling their stealth tech in a flash of static. She struck first, her blade slicing through armor with lethal precision, while Elias grappled the second, his strength overpowering the Draxian's bulk. The third lunged, but Sylvara's reflexes were faster, her blade ending the threat. They emerged, breathless but unharmed, to find Terran staring, impressed. "Nice work," she said, but her eyes lingered on Sylvara's harness, where the stabilizers glowed. "Those vials are our leverage. If the Draxians get them—" She didn't finish, but the stakes were clear. Elias wiped sweat from his brow, his gaze returning to Sylvara. "We're not losing them. Or you." Vera approached, holding a portable injector. "Sylvara, I've calibrated a stabilizer dose," she said. "It'll regulate your system, prevent any unexpected progression." Sylvara hesitated, then extended her arm, her emerald skin stark against the injector's gleam. The dose stung, but she felt a subtle shift, her body stabilizing. Elias watched, his protective instinct palpable. "How long does it last?" he asked. Vera's expression was grim. "A week, maybe less. We need a proper facility." Another explosion rocked the lab, closer now. The holo display showed the main Draxian force advancing, their numbers overwhelming. Elias's resolve hardened, his human defiance shining through. "We hold this lab," he said, addressing the group. "We protect the stabilizers, the data, and each other. Reinforcements are coming. We just need time." But Sylvara caught a flicker of doubt in Terran's eyes, a secret she wasn't sharing. The commander knew something about the reinforcements, or their absence, that could change everything. As they fortified the lab, Sylvara felt the stabilizers hum against her chest, a reminder of the life she might carry, the future she and Elias could choose. The Draxian assault was a threat, but Terran's hesitation was a crack in their unity, a danger that could unravel them from within. The auxiliary lab's reinforced walls vibrated with a distant rumble of Draxian breaching charges, each explosion a reminder of the shrinking distance between the survivors and their enemies. Elias Vark stood by the holo display, his dark eyes tracing the red blips of advancing Draxian forces. His tactical vest was scuffed, his stubbled jaw set with resolve. Sylvara adjusted the stasis unit's harness across her chest, its glowing vials a constant weight against her emerald skin. Her midnight blue braids framed a face taut with determination, the stabilizer's effects steadying her body but not her heart. Dr. Vera's revelation, that she was engineered for a hybrid child, had cracked her sense of self, but Elias's unwavering presence rebuilt it, piece by piece. Commander Terran Cade barked orders, positioning survivors at the lab's choke points. Her bloodied uniform hung loose on her lean frame, her eyes darting to the holo display with attention Elias couldn't ignore. "EMP traps are live," she said, her voice clipped, "but they won't hold long." Dr. Vera worked at a console, her silver robes catching the emergency lighting as she backed up the hybrid program's data. The lab hummed with activity, yet Sylvara felt the weight of eyes on her, not just as a warrior, but as the key to a future no one fully understood. Elias approached her, his broad frame a quiet shield. "You holding up?" he asked, his baritone low, meant for her alone. Sylvara's golden eyes met his, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through her Klytheran pride. "I'm trained for battle," she said, "not for being a project." Her hand brushed the stabilizers, her voice softening. "But with you, I feel like I can choose who I am." His hand found hers, warm against her cooler skin, the contact grounding them both. "You're not their experiment," he said, his tone fierce. "You're Sylvara, the woman who dared me to guess her name, and won my soul in the process." Her lips curved, a rare smile that lit her emerald face. The binding, sparked by his voice, was no longer just a Klytheran law. It was a promise they both felt, a tether stronger than any council's design. The moment shattered as a proximity alarm blared. Terran spun to the holo display. "Draxians at the east choke point," she snapped. "They've bypassed the traps." Elias released Sylvara's hand, his tactical mind kicking in. "We need to reinforce the east entrance," he said, grabbing his sidearm. "Sylvara, cover the west with Vera." She nodded, her pulse blade humming as she moved, but Terran's hesitation caught her eye, a fleeting glance at the data console, too deliberate to ignore. Sylvara followed Elias to the east entrance, a narrow corridor lined with Klytheran runes that pulsed erratically under the strain of battle. Draxian shadows loomed beyond the blast door, their guttural commands audible through the alloy. Elias rigged a secondary EMP charge, his movements precise despite the chaos. "They're testing our defenses," he said, his augmented senses picking up their numbers. At least a dozen, heavily armed. Sylvara's blade gleamed as she took position, her Klytheran agility poised for combat. "We can't let them reach the lab," she said, her voice steady. "The stabilizers, the data, it's all tied to us." Elias shot her a glance, his dark eyes warm with pride. "We won't." Their partnership, forged in the drop pod's fire, felt unbreakable, a human's defiance blending with her warrior's grace. The blast door shuddered, a breaching charge glowing red at its seams. Elias detonated the EMP, the pulse frying the Draxian's tech in a shower of sparks. Sylvara struck first, her blade slicing through the first soldier's armor as the door gave way. Elias followed, his sidearm's precise shots dropping two more. The Draxians were formidable, their scales deflecting blows, but the pair's synergy overwhelmed them. Sylvara's speed, Elias's strength, a dance of survival. They pushed the enemy back, sealing the corridor with a temporary barrier. Breathing hard, Sylvara caught Elias's arm. "Terran's hiding something," she said, her voice low. "I saw her at the console. She's accessing restricted files." Elias's brow furrowed, his trust in the commander wavering. "Could be mission critical," he said, but doubt laced his tone. "Or she's covering her own agenda." They returned to the lab, where Terran stood by Vera, her posture too rigid. "East is secure," Elias reported, his eyes locking onto Terran's. "Anything we should know?" Terran's gaze flickered, then steadied. "Just managing resources," she said, too smoothly. Vera glanced up, her expression troubled, but said nothing. Sylvara's instinct screamed. Terran's secrecy was a crack in their defense, a threat as dangerous as the Draxians. Another explosion rocked the lab, this one from the west. The holo display showed a new breach, Draxian elites cutting through the secondary defenses. Terran cursed, grabbing her rifle. "They're splitting our focus," she said. Elias's mind raced, spotting a pattern in the attacks. "They're not just after the lab," he said. "They're drawing us out. Someone's feeding them our movements." The accusation hung, Terran's silence damning. Sylvara's hand tightened on her blade, her trust in the chain of command eroding. Elias stepped closer, his voice low. "We stick together," he told her. "No matter what." His human loyalty, unyielding despite betrayal, anchored her. As they moved to repel the new attack, Sylvara realized the true fight wasn't just for the lab. It was for their right to define their bond, their future, against a galaxy that sought to control them. The auxiliary lab's air was thick with tension, the hum of its power grid a faint counterpoint to the distant booms of Draxian breaching charges. Elias Vark crouched by the west entrance, his sidearm trained on the corridor where shadows flickered with enemy movement. His tactical vest was scuffed, his dark eyes sharp with focus. Sylvara stood beside him, her emerald skin catching the rune's pulsing glow, her midnight blue braids still as she gripped her pulse blade. The stabilizer's harness pressed against her chest, a reminder of the hybrid program, and the betrayal that had engineered her life. Commander Terran's secrecy gnawed at her, but Elias's steady presence kept her anchored. Dr. Vera worked feverishly at a console, her silver robes swaying as she transferred the last of the hybrid data to a secure drive. Commander Terran Cade paced nearby, her bloodied uniform taut across her shoulders, her eyes darting to the holo display. The Draxian elites were closing in, their stealth tech making them ghosts on the scanners. "They're too coordinated," Elias muttered, his augmented senses picking up faint vibrations. "Someone's guiding them." Sylvara's golden eyes flicked to Terran, her suspicion hardening. "We need to talk," she said, her melodic voice low but firm. Terran's jaw tightened, but before she could respond, a deafening blast shook the lab. The west entrance buckled, a breaching charge melting through the alloy. Elias reacted instantly, tossing an EMP grenade that fried the elite's tech in a burst of static. Sylvara lunged, her blade a blur as she cut down the first Draxian, his scales no match for her precision. Elias followed, his shots precise, their synergy a lethal dance that pushed the enemy back. The corridor sealed, but the attack had cost them time. Sylvara rounded on Terran, her braids swaying with her intensity. "You're hiding something," she said, her voice cutting through the lab's hum. "I saw you at the console, restricted files. What are you doing?" Terran's eyes flashed, but Vera stepped forward, her expression heavy. "She deserves the truth, Terran," the scientist said. "They both do." Terran exhaled, her shoulders slumping. "Fine," she said, her voice clipped. The hybrid program wasn't just Klytheran. The Terran Alliance co-funded it, pushed for accelerated results. "Sylvara, you're not just a Klytheran asset. You're a joint project." Sylvara's emerald skin paled, her hand instinctively touching the stabilizers. "A project?" she echoed, the word bitter. "And you knew?" Terran nodded, guilt shadowing her face. "I was briefed to ensure the stabilizers reached the lab. But there's more." She hesitated, then continued. "The program's goal wasn't just a hybrid. It was a weaponized one. Enhanced strength, telepathic potential, designed to shift galactic power." Elias's hand tightened on his sidearm, his protective instinct flaring. "You let them engineer her for war?" he demanded, his baritone laced with anger. Vera interjected, her voice soft but firm. "Not all of us agreed. I joined a bridge species, not weaponize them." "Sylvara, your modifications were meant to create unity, accelerated healing, empathy, a longer lifespan. But the councils, they saw a soldier." Sylvara's heart pounded, her Klytheran pride warring with the violation of her autonomy. She'd been shaped not just for Elias, but for a war she'd never chosen. Elias stepped closer, his warmth a quiet shield. "They don't get to define you," he said, his eyes locked on hers. "Or us." His words, simple yet resolute, rekindled her defiance. She nodded, her golden eyes fierce. "Then we protect the stabilizers and destroy the weaponized data. No one uses me like that." Terran's expression shifted, a flicker of resistance crossing her face. "The data's our leverage," she argued. "Without it, we're expendable to both governments." Elias's gaze hardened. Leverage or a leash? The tension spiked, Terran's loyalty to the Alliance clashing with Sylvara's resolve. Before they could resolve it, the holo display flashed a new Draxian squad, larger than before, breaching the outer defenses. "We don't have time for this," Elias snapped, his tactical mind taking over. "Vera, wipe the weaponized files." Terran reinforced the east entrance. "Sylvara with me." They moved to the west corridor, where the Draxians were regrouping. Sylvara's blade hummed, her warrior instincts sharp, but her mind churned with Vera's words. A weaponized hybrid, her child, if it came to that, could be a target, not a bridge. The Draxians attacked, their numbers overwhelming. Elias and Sylvara fought back to back, his strength complementing her agility. A Draxian elite lunged, its claw grazing Sylvara's arm, drawing a line of blue blood. Elias roared, tackling the enemy, his human ferocity overpowering its bulk. Sylvara finished it with a precise strike, her breath ragged. "You okay?" Elias asked, his hand on her shoulder. She nodded, the pain secondary to the fire in her chest. "We end this," she said. "For us." As they sealed the corridor, a calm crackled with Vera's voice. "Data's wiped, except the core hybrid specs. But there's a problem." She hesitated. "Terran's gone." She took a copy of the weaponized files. Sylvara's blood ran cold, the betrayal cutting deeper than any claw. Terran wasn't just hiding secrets. She was playing her own game, risking them all for leverage with the Alliance. Elias's face darkened, his human loyalty tested. "She's headed for the command center," he said, reading the holo display's troop movements. The Draxians are pulling back there. She's making a deal. Sylvara's hand tightened on her blade. Her trust in the chain of command shattered. Elias's resolve, his refusal to let betrayal break them, fueled her own. They had to stop Terran, protect the stabilizers, and survive the night together. The auxiliary lab's lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across the reinforced walls as the hum of the power grid faltered under the strain of Draxian assaults. Elias Vark stood by the holo display, his dark eyes tracking the enemy's retreat toward the outpost's command center. His tactical vest was torn, his stubbled jaw clenched with a mix of fury and resolve. Sylvara adjusted the stabilizer's harness, her emerald skin stark against the glowing vials, her midnight blue braids swaying as she processed Terran's betrayal. The revelation that Commander Terrancade had stolen the weaponized hybrid data and was likely bargaining with the Draxians cut deeper than any wound. Dr. Vera's silver robes rustled as she sealed the remaining data, her golden eyes heavy with guilt for the program that had shaped Sylvara's life. "We can't let Terran hand over those files," Elias said, his baritone low but urgent. "If the Draxians get weaponized hybrid specs, this war escalates beyond the outpost." Sylvara's pulse blade hummed in her hand, her Klytheran warrior instincts flaring. "She's trading our future for her own leverage," she said, her melodic voice edged with anger. "We stop her now." Her golden eyes met Elias's, their bond a quiet strength amidst the chaos. Vera approached, holding a portable scanner. "Sylvara, the stabilizers are holding, but your system's showing anomalies," she said, her tone cautious. "The binding with Elias, it's accelerating your genetic responses." Sylvara's hand instinctively touched her abdomen, a flicker of fear crossing her emerald face. "Accelerating how?" she asked. Vera hesitated. "If conception occurs, it could progress in days, not months. The stabilizers can't fully counter it." Elias's expression darkened, his protective instinct surging. "Then we keep her safe," he said, his voice a vow. "No experiments, no risks." A distant explosion rattled the lab, the holo display flashing as Draxian forces regrouped at the command center. "Terran's got a head start," Elias said, studying the map. "But the ventilation shafts connect directly to the center. We can intercept her." Sylvara nodded, her resolve hardening. "Let's move." They grabbed minimal gear, sidearms, pulse blade, and the stabilizers, leaving Vera to fortify the lab with the remaining survivors. The ventilation shaft was a claustrophobic maze, its walls vibrating with the outpost's dying pulse. Elias led, his augmented senses mapping the route, while Sylvara followed, her Klytheran agility keeping pace despite the harness's weight. The air was stale, thick with the tang of scorched metal. "Terran's desperate," Elias whispered, his voice muffled. "She's betting on the Draxians to save her skin." Sylvara's braids brushed the shaft's walls, her mind churning. "She's betraying both our people," she said. "For what? Power." They reached a grate overlooking the command center, a cavernous room lined with consoles and flickering holoscreens. Terran stood at the central terminal, her bloodied uniform stark against the glow, uploading the stolen files to a portable drive. Two Draxian elites flanked her, their scales glinting, their red eyes fixed on the data. "You get the specs," Terran was saying, her voice tense. "I get safe passage." The Draxian hissed, its voice a guttural rasp. "The purist will decide your worth, human." Elias's hand tightened on his sidearm, his human loyalty tested to its breaking point. "She's selling us out," he whispered, his tone cold. Sylvara's blade hummed softly, her warrior's pride warring with disbelief. "We take her alive," she said. "She answers for this." Elias nodded, rigging a flash charge to the grate. "On 3. He counted down, then detonated the charge, the blast disorienting the Draxians as they dropped through. Sylvara struck first, her blade slicing through one elite's armor, blue blood spraying. Elias tackled the second, his strength overpowering its bulk, his sidearm finishing the job. Terran spun, her rifle raised, but Sylvara was faster, disarming her with a precise kick. "What?" Sylvara demanded, her voice raw. Terran's eyes were wild, defiant. You think the Alliance cares about unity? They want control, same as the Klytherans. I'm surviving. Elias secured the drive, his face a mask of disgust. You're sacrificing a future for a ticket out, he said. But before Terran could respond, the terminal flashed. A hidden subroutine activated, broadcasting the files to an unknown receiver. Terran's face paled. That wasn't me, she stammered. Someone else is in the system. Sylvara's blood ran cold, her golden eyes darting to the holoscreen. A third party, neither Draxian nor Alliance, had infiltrated the outpost network, siphoning the data. The command center's doors hissed open, revealing a new figure. A Klytheran male, his skin a deep sapphire, his robes marked with covert insignia. Well done, Commander, he said to Terran, his voice smooth. You played your part. Sylvara's heart sank. Kaylee's, a council operative, her former mentor. You orchestrated this, she accused, her blade raised. Kaylee's golden eyes gleamed. The council needed the data exposed to force a galactic response. You, Sylvara, were the catalyst. Elias stepped between them, his sidearm trained on Kaylee's. You used her, he growled. Both of us. Kaylee's smile was cold. A hybrid child will unite or destroy us. The council merely accelerated fate. The betrayal cut Sylvara to her core, her trust in her people shattered. Elias's defiance, his refusal to bow to manipulation, fueled her own. We're not your pawns, she said, her voice a vow. An alarm blared. The Draxians were regrouping, drawn by the broadcast. Elias grabbed Sylvara's arm. We need to move, he said. Back to the lab. They bound Terran, leaving Kaylee's to face the incoming enemy, his smugness faltering. As they retreated through the shafts, Sylvara felt the stabilizers hum, a reminder of a life she might carry, and the fight to define it on their terms. The ventilation shafts echoed with the distant clang of Draxian boots, their pursuit closing in as Elias Vark and Sylvara navigated the outpost's labyrinthine underbelly. Elias led, his sidearm ready, his dark eyes scanning for threats. His tactical vest was torn, sweat beading on his stubbled jaw, but his focus never wavered. Sylvara followed, her emerald skin dim in the shaft's gloom, her midnight blue braids brushing the walls. The stabilizer's harness pressed against her chest, its glowing vials a beacon of the hybrid program and the Council's betrayal. Terran's bound hands slowed them, her silence a stark contrast to her earlier defiance. Kaylee's revelation that the Klytheran Council had orchestrated the data leak to force a galactic crisis burned in Sylvara's chest, shattering her loyalty. We're almost at the lab, Elias whispered, his augmented senses picking up the hum of the auxiliary power grid. Sylvara nodded, her pulse blade humming softly, but her golden eyes were distant, haunted. Kaylee's was my mentor, she said, her melodic voice barely audible. He trained me to serve, to trust the Council. Now I'm just their spark for war. Elias glanced back, his expression softening. You're not their tool, Sylvara. You're my partner. We choose what comes next. His words, fierce yet tender, steadied her. The binding, sparked by her true name, was no longer just a Klytheran rite. It was a vow they'd forged in fire. But a sudden pang in her abdomen made her falter, her hand instinctively pressing against the harness. The stabilizer's effects were fading, her body reacting to the binding's catalyst. Elias noticed, his protective instinct flaring. You okay? He asked, pausing despite the risk. She forced a nod, her emerald skin paling. Just keep moving. They emerged into the auxiliary lab, where Dr. Vera and the survivors had fortified the defenses. Vera's silver robe swayed as she rushed to Sylvara, her golden eyes wide with concern. You're back, she said, then froze, noticing Sylvara's strained expression. What's wrong? Sylvara hesitated, then admitted, something's happening. My body, it's changing. Vera's scanner hummed, its holographic display revealing alarming readings. The bindings triggered your reproductive cycle, she said, her voice tight. Conceptions occurred, and it's accelerating fast. Elias's breath caught, his hand finding Sylvara's, his warmth grounding her. Conception, he echoed, his baritone thick with awe and fear. Sylvara's golden eyes met his, a storm of emotions swirling within. The stabilizers were supposed to prevent this, she said, her voice trembling. Vera shook her head. They're slowing it, but the binding's too strong. You're at the equivalent of weeks in hours. Sylvara's hand rested on her abdomen, a faint swell already forming, impossible yet undeniable. Terran, still bound, scoffed from the corner. You're their perfect experiment, she muttered. Elias rounded on her, his eyes blazing. Shut it, he snapped, his human loyalty to Sylvara outweighing his training. But Terran's words stung, a reminder of the Council's manipulation. Sylvara's Klytheran pride surged, her resolve hardening. This child isn't theirs, she said, her voice fierce. It's ours. Vera injected another stabilizer dose, the sting sharp but stabilizing. This buys you 48 hours, maybe, she warned. After that, you need a medical facility. Elias's tactical mind kicked in, his focus shifting to survival. The Draxians are regrouping at the command center, he said, checking the holo display. Kaylee's is likely coordinating with them, or using them. We can't stay here. A survivor, a young Terran tech named Joran, spoke up. There's an emergency escape pod in Section D, he said, his voice shaky. Stealth capable, but it's single use. Only fits 3. Sylvara's eyes narrowed, calculating. Me, Elias, and the stabilizers, she said. Vera shook her head. You need a medic. I'm coming. Elias frowned, his protective instinct clashing with logic. That leaves the others exposed, he said. We need a distraction. The holo display flashed, a Draxian squad advancing, faster than expected. They've cracked our comms, Joran said, panic creeping in. Elias's augmented senses picked up a new signal, faint but deliberate, emanating from Terran's gear. Ew, he growled, searching her vest and finding a hidden transmitter. You're signaling them. Terran's defiance crumbled, her eyes wide. I was buying time, she stammered. The Alliance. Elias cut her off, smashing the device. You're done, he said, binding her to a console. Sylvara's blade hummed, her trust in authority shattered. We use her signal, she said, her tactical mind sharp. Send a false location, draw the Draxians away. Elias nodded, impressed by her quick thinking. Joran rerouted the signal, broadcasting a decoy to the outpost's east wing. The plan bought the minutes. Elias led Sylvara and Vera through the tunnels towards Section D, the stabilizers' glow lighting their path. Sylvara's steps grew heavier, the accelerated pregnancy sapping her strength, but her warrior's spirit held. Elias supported her, his arms steady around her waist. We're getting you out, he said, his voice a vow. Both of you. Her golden eyes softened, the binding's melody echoing in her heart. They reached the escape pod, a sleek Klytheran design hidden behind a rune-locked panel. Vera entered the access code, the pod hissing open. But the holo display in the tunnel flashed. A Draxian elite squad, redirected from the decoy, was closing in. They're too fast, Vera said, her voice grim. Elias's jaw tightened, his human defiance surging. Then we fight, he said, readying his sidearm. Get Sylvara in the pod. Sylvara grabbed his arm, her emerald skin flushed with determination. We fight together, she said, her blade raised. The child growing within her wasn't just a hybrid. It was their choice, their defiance against a galaxy that sought to control them. As the Draxian's shadows loomed, Elias's resolve mirrored hers, a human's heart proving as fierce as any warrior's soul. The tunnel to Section D was a cold, rune-etched artery of the outpost, its faint glow barely piercing the darkness as Elias Vark led the way, his sidearm drawn. His tactical vest hung heavy with scuffs and dents, his dark eyes scanning for the Draxian elite squad closing in. Sylvara followed, her emerald skin slick with sweat, the stabilizer's harness pressing against the faint swell of her abdomen. Her midnight blue braids swayed with each labored step, the accelerated pregnancy draining her strength, but her golden eyes burned with defiance. Dr. Vera brought up the rear, her silver robes catching the rune's light, a medical injector clutched in her trembling hand. The escape pod was close, but the Draxians' guttural commands echoed nearer, their stealth tech making them ghosts in the shadows. "We're almost there," Elias whispered, his baritone steady despite the tension. His augmented senses picked up the faint hum of the pod's systems through the walls, a beacon of hope. Sylvara gripped her pulse blade, its hum a counterpoint to her racing heart. The child within her, growing at an impossible rate, was no longer just a council experiment. It was theirs, a life they'd protect against any odds. Vera's warning about the 48-hour stabilizer limit loomed, but Sylvara's Klytheran pride refused to falter. "We make it," she said, her melodic voice firm. For her. Elias glanced back, his expression a mix of awe and resolve. He repeated, the words soft but heavy. The binding, sparked by her true name, had woven their fates, but this child was their choice, a defiance of manipulation. He reached for her hand, his warmth steadying her, but a sudden tremor shook the tunnel, dust raining from the ceiling. The holo display on Vera's scanner flashed. Draxians, less than a minute out. "They've bypassed the decoy," Vera said, her voice tight. "We're out of time." Elias's tactical mind surged, spotting a maintenance alcove ahead, its panel marked with Klytheran runes. "There," he said, prying it open to reveal a tangle of power conduits. "We rig a trap." Sylvara nodded, her warrior instincts syncing with his plan. She sliced a conduit with her blade, exposing sparking wires, while Elias rigged an overload charge from his vest's last EMP grenade. "This'll fry their tech," he said, "but we need to draw them in." Vera's eyes widened. "Your bait?" she asked, alarmed. Elias's lips curved into a grim smile. "Humans are good at getting attention." Sylvara grabbed his arm, her emerald skin flushing. "Not alone," she said, her voice fierce. "We do this together." His gaze softened, a silent acknowledgement of their bond. "Always," he said, squeezing her hand. They positioned themselves at the alcove's mouth, Vera hidden behind a crate, injector ready. Elias fired a deliberate shot down the tunnel, the sound echoing like a challenge. The Draxians responded, their red eyes glinting as four elites emerged, their scales absorbing the dim light. Sylvara's blade hummed, her Klytheran agility poised, but her body ached, the pregnancy's weight slowing her. Elias noticed, stepping forward to shield her. "Stay sharp," he whispered, his sidearm raised. The Draxians charged, their claws extended. Elias detonated the charge, a pulse of energy surging through the conduits, frying their stealth tech and weapons in a crackling storm. Sylvara struck, her blade carving through one elite's armor, while Elias grappled another, his human strength overpowering its bulk. The third lunged at Sylvara, but Vera darted forward, injecting a sedative that dropped it instantly. The fourth retreated, wounded, its hiss echoing as it vanished into the shadows. Breathing hard, Sylvara leaned against the wall, her hand on her abdomen. "That was too close," she said, pain lacing her voice. Elias supported her, his arms steady around her waist. "You're tougher than they are," he said, his tone warm with pride. Vera checked her scanner, her expression grim. "More coming," she said. "We need that pod now." They reached the escape pod, its sleek Klytheran design glowing faintly behind the rune-locked panel. Vera entered the code, the pod hissing open, its interior barely large enough for three. But the scanner pinged again, a new signal, not Draxian, emanating from the command center. "It's Klytheran," Vera said, her voice tense. "Kaylee's. He's still active, rerouting power to trap us here." Sylvara's blood ran cold. Her former mentor wasn't just a traitor. He was a puppet master, ensuring the council's plan unfolded, even at her expense. Elias's jaw tightened, his human defiance flaring. "He's not locking us in," he said, studying the pod's console. "There's a manual override, but it's in the command center. Sylvara's golden eyes narrowed, her warrior's spirit unbroken. "Then we take it back," she said, despite the pain rippling through her. Vera shook her head. "You're in no condition," she said, gesturing to Sylvara's swell. "Let me go." The offer hung, but a new voice cut through, a Terran survivor, Joran, emerging from the tunnel. "I can help," he said, his young face pale but determined. "I know the center's systems. I'll go with Vera." Elias hesitated, then nodded, recognizing the boy's courage. "You get in, override the lock, and get out," he said. "We'll hold the pod." Joran swallowed, his human resolve shining through, a quiet echo of Elias's own. As Vera and Joran slipped back into the tunnels, Elias helped Sylvara into the pod, her steps heavy but her spirit fierce. "Kayleigh thinks he's won," she said, her voice low. "He's wrong." Elias's hand rested on her shoulder, his dark eyes warm. "He underestimated us," he said. "Humans don't quit, and neither do you." The pod's hum filled the silence, a promise of escape. But the command center's override was their only hope, and Joran's courage a fragile thread against Kayleigh's schemes. The escape pod's interior was a cramped cocoon of Klytheran tech, its walls pulsing with soft runes that cast a faint glow over Sylvara's emerald skin. She sat on the narrow bench, her midnight blue braids limp against her shoulders, her golden eyes fixed on the stabilizer's harness across her chest. The faint swell of her abdomen was now unmistakable, the accelerated pregnancy pushing her body to its limits. Pain rippled through her, sharp and unrelenting, but her warrior's resolve held, fueled by the child she and Elias had claimed as their own. Elias stood by the pod's open hatch, his sidearm trained on the tunnel outside, his tactical vest scarred from battle. His dark eyes flicked between the darkness and Sylvara, his human protectiveness a quiet force that anchored her. "They're taking too long," Sylvara said, her melodic voice strained as another contraction gripped her. Elias crouched beside her, his hand warm against her cooler skin. "Vera and Joran will get the override," he said, his baritone steady. "We just need to hold on." But the tunnel silence was ominous, broken only by the distant rumble of Draxian movements. Kayleigh's sabotage, rerouting power to trap them, loomed like a noose, and Sylvara's former mentor was a specter she couldn't shake. The pod's console pinged, a faint signal from Vera's scanner. "Command center reached," her voice crackled through. "Joran's working the override, but Kayleigh's is here, armed." Elias's jaw tightened, his augmented senses picking up the tension in her words. "Stay sharp," he replied. "We're ready." Sylvara's hand clenched, her pulse blade humming on her lap. "If Kayleigh stops them," she began, but Elias's gaze silenced her doubt. "He won't," he said. "Joran's got more guts than Kayleigh's expects." A sudden tremor shook the pod, the tunnel walls vibrating as a Draxian breaching charge detonated nearby. Elias sprang to the hatch, his sidearm raised, firing into the darkness. Sylvara forced herself to her feet, ignoring the pain, her Klytheran agility strained but unbroken. She joined him, her blade raised, her emerald skin slick with sweat. The tunnel erupted with Draxian elites. 5, their scales glinting, red eyes locked on the pod. Elias fired, his shots precise, dropping one, while Sylvara's blade slashed another, blue blood spraying. But the pain was overwhelming, her vision blurring as another contraction hit, stronger than before. "Sylvara, get in the pod," Elias shouted, his voice cutting through her haze. She stumbled back, her hand on her abdomen, the swell now pronounced. "Not without you," she gasped, her warrior's pride flaring. Elias tackled a Draxian, his human strength overpowering its bulk, but another lunged, its claw grazing his arm, drawing blood. Sylvara's blade struck true, felling it, but she collapsed against the pod, her breath ragged. Elias dragged her inside, sealing the hatch as the remaining Draxians pounded against it. The pod's systems hummed, but the override hadn't triggered. The launch sequence was locked. Sylvara's golden eyes met his, fear and determination swirling within. "The child," she whispered, her voice breaking. Elias knelt beside her, wiping sweat from her brow. "We're getting her out," he said, his tone a vow. "All three of us." The console crackled again, Vera's voice frantic. "Override's in. But Kaylee's," he sabotaged the beacon. "It'll draw Draxians when we launch." Elias cursed, his mind racing. Joran's voice cut through, shaky but resolute. "I can reroute the beacon. Give me a minute." Elias gripped the console, his human ingenuity sparking. "Do it, kid. We're counting on you." Sylvara's contractions intensified, each wave stealing her breath. Elias held her hand, his warmth grounding her, and softly spoke her true name, a melodic hum that echoed their binding. The sound tethered her, easing the pain, her golden eyes locking onto his. "Talk to me," she pleaded, her voice faint. Elias smiled, brushing her braids back. "When I first saw you, I thought you were a star given form," he said. "Emerald skin, eyes like gold. I was done for." Her lips curved, a fleeting smile. "And you, too stubborn to quit." The pod shuddered, Draxian claws scraping the hatch. Sylvara's scanner beeped urgently, its holographic display projecting a life within her, fully formed, impossibly fast. "She's coming," Sylvara gasped, her body arching. Elias's face paled, but his resolve held. "Vera," he shouted into the comm, "medical bay now." Vera's voice crackled back. "We're pinned down. Kaylee's is..." A gunshot cut her off, then silence. Elias's heart sank, but Joran's voice returned. "Beacons rerouted. Launch now." The pod systems flared, the override kicking in. Elias strapped Sylvara in, his hands steady despite the chaos, then hit the launch sequence. The pod lurched, engines roaring as it shot from the outpost, the Draxian's claws falling away. Sylvara cried out, the contractions relentless. Elias knelt beside her, his augmented senses useless against her pain. "You're stronger than this," he said, his voice fierce. "You're Klytheran. You're mine." She gripped his hand, her emerald skin glistening, and pushed, her warrior's strength defying her body's limits. The pod soared, stars blurring past, but the world narrowed to her, to the life they'd created. A cry pierced the air, not Sylvara's, but a new voice, small yet fierce. Elias stared, awestruck, as Sylvara cradled a tiny girl, her skin shifting between emerald and human tones, silver blue hair crowning her head. Her eyes, human-shaped, gold-flecked, fluttered open, meeting theirs. "She's perfect," Sylvara whispered, tears streaking her face. Elias touched the child's hand, her fingers curling around his, and felt his heart shift, a new purpose born. The console pinged, a Draxian ship drawn by the sabotaged beacon, closing fast. Elias's jaw tightened, his human defiance surging. "Hold her," he told Sylvara, moving to the controls. The pod wasn't armed, but he'd outrun death before. Sylvara clutched their daughter, her golden eyes fierce. "We're not done," she said, her voice a vow. The stars beckoned, danger loomed, but their family, bound by choice, not design, was a light no force could extinguish. The escape pod streaked through the void, its engines a low hum against the vast silence of space. Stars blurred past the viewport, a cosmic tapestry framing Sylvara as she cradled their newborn daughter, her emerald skin glistening with exhaustion. The infant's silver blue hair shimmered, her gold-flecked eyes, human in shape, Klytheran in hue, gazing up with uncanny awareness. Sylvara's midnight blue braids hung limp, her combat suit torn, but her golden eyes burned with a mother's fierce love. Elias Vark sat at the controls, his tactical vest discarded, his dark eyes scanning the console for the pursuing Draxian ship. The sabotaged beacon had drawn them, its signal a relentless hunter in the black. "We're not outrunning them," Elias said, his baritone steady despite the tightening odds. His stubbled jaw clenched as he adjusted the pod's course toward the Vidian Nebula, a swirling haze of gas and dust that could mask their signature. Sylvara shifted, wincing from the aftershocks of her accelerated birth, and secured their daughter in a Klytheran harness adapted for the pod's bench. "Can we lose them in the nebula?" she asked, her melodic voice hoarse but resolute. Elias nodded, his augmented senses calculating trajectories. "It's our best shot." The dust'll scramble their sensors. His hands moved with precision, but his gaze flicked to Sylvara and the child, a flicker of awe breaking through his focus. The binding, sparked by her true name, had led to this, a family forged in defiance of councils and empires. Sylvara met his eyes, her emerald skin warming. "We're together," she said, a vow that steadied them both. The console pinged, the Draxian ship closing faster than expected. "They've upgraded their drives," Elias muttered, pushing the pod's engines to their limit. The nebula loomed, its violet and gold clouds swirling like a cosmic storm. But a new signal crackled through the calm. A melodic chime, Klytheran in origin. Sylvara's breath caught, her hand tightening on the harness. "It's not Kaylee's," she said, decoding the signal. "It's Ambassador Lyran." A hologram flickered, revealing a Klytheran female, her skin a deep amethyst, her robes flowing with diplomatic insignia. "Sylvara, Commander Vark." Lyran's voice was calm, authoritative. "I represent the Klytheran Concord, not the Council. Your child's birth has reached us. We offer sanctuary." Elias's brow furrowed, his trust and authority eroded by betrayal. "Sanctuary?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Or another cage?" Lyran's golden eyes softened. "Your daughter is a bridge, not a weapon. The Concord seeks peace, not control. Rendezvous at these coordinates." The hologram transmitted a location within the nebula, then faded. Sylvara's gaze lingered on the console, her Klytheran loyalty warring with caution. "The Concord opposes the Council's militarism," she said. "But Kaylee's allies could be tracking them." Before Elias could respond, the pod shuddered, a Draxian tractor beam grazing their hull. "They've got a lock," he growled, banking hard into the nebula's edge. The clouds enveloped them, sensors flickering as dust interfered. Sylvara's fingers flew across the co-pilot console, rerouting power to the stealth systems. "We need to break their beam," she said, her warrior instincts sharp despite her fatigue. Their daughter stirred, a soft coo cutting through the tension, and Sylvara's heart clenched, her resolve hardening. Elias's tactical mind sparked an idea. "The nebula's got ionized particles," he said. "We overload the auxiliary emitter, create a pulse to disrupt their beam." Sylvara nodded, impressed by his ingenuity, a human's knack for turning nature's chaos into a weapon. She configured the emitter, her hands steady, while Elias piloted through the nebula's currents, dodging debris. The pulse fired, a silent flare that broke the tractor beam, but the Draxians adjusted, their ship a persistent shadow. The comm crackled again, this time with a Terran signal, encrypted, urgent. Elias decrypted it, his face darkening. "It's from the outpost," he said. "Vare is alive, but the Alliance is disavowing the program. Retrieval teams are en route for Sylvara and the child." Sylvara's emerald skin paled, the Council's betrayal now mirrored by the Terrans. "They're calling us property," she said, her voice bitter. Their daughter's tiny hand grasped her finger, a spark of defiance in her gold-flecked eyes. Elias's hand found Sylvara's, his warmth a quiet vow. "No one takes you," he said, his tone fierce. "Not the Alliance, not the Council." The nebula's heart loomed, the Concord's coordinates close, but the Draxian ship fired a warning shot, rocking the pod. Sylvara's mind raced, her Klytheran diplomacy surfacing. "We use Lyran's offer," she said. "Meet the Concord, but on our terms, not as refugees, but as equals." Elias's lips curved, admiration clear. Spoken like a warrior. He adjusted course, the pod diving deeper into the nebula. The Draxians followed, but a new signal emerged. A Concord vessel, its sleek design cutting through the clouds. Lyran's voice returned. "We've engaged the Draxians. Proceed to the rendezvous." The pod shook as the Concord ship fired, drawing the enemy away. Sylvara cradled their daughter, naming her in her heart. Aelira, meaning star's harmony, in Klytheran. "We're free," she whispered, her golden eyes meeting Elias's. But the Terran's signal lingered, a reminder that freedom came at cost. The Alliance's retrieval teams were closing, and the Concord sanctuary was no guarantee. Elias's human defiance, his refusal to bow, fueled her own. They'd faced the stars together, their family a beacon no empire could claim. The escape pod glided through the Vidian Nebula's swirling clouds, its stealth systems humming as violet and gold dust cloaked their path. Elias Vark gripped the controls, his dark eyes scanning the console for signs of pursuit. His torn shirt clung to his broad frame, sweat tracing the stubble on his jaw, but his focus was unbreakable. Sylvara sat beside him, her emerald skin catching the pod's faint runes, her midnight blue braids framing a face etched with exhaustion and resolve. Aelira, their newborn daughter, slept in a Klytheran harness against her chest, her silver blue hair shimmering, her gold-flecked eyes closed in fragile peace. The stabilizer's vials, secured in the harness, glowed softly, their hum a reminder of the hybrid program and the forces hunting them. The Concord vessel had driven off the Draxian ship, its sleek silhouette fading into the nebula's haze, but the Terran Alliance's retrieval signal lingered in Elias's mind. "They're not giving up," he said, his baritone low, his augmented senses attuned to the pod systems. "The Alliance wants Aelira as a lab specimen." Sylvara's golden eyes hardened, her hand resting protectively over their daughter. "They'll have to go through us," she said, her melodic voice fierce despite her fatigue. The binding, sparked by her true name, had forged a family, and no council or empire would tear it apart. The pod approached the Concord's rendezvous coordinates, a hidden platform within the nebula's core, its structure a blend of Klytheran elegance and practical design. Ambassador Lyran's hologram flickered on the console, her amethyst skin serene, her golden eyes warm. "You're safe here," she said. "The Concord guarantees asylum." Elias's jaw tightened, his trust and promises eroded by betrayal. "Asylum's a start," he said, "but we're not handing over our daughter." Lyran's expression softened. "Nor would we ask. Aelira is a symbol of unity, not a tool." She transmitted docking protocols, the platform shields parting to reveal a sleek bay. Sylvara's Klytheran instincts urged caution, but Lyran's defiance of the council resonated with her own. "We dock," she said, meeting Elias's gaze. "But we stay ready." He nodded, his human defiance mirroring her resolve, and guided the pod into the bay, its clamps locking with a soft thud. The platform's interior was a marvel, curved walls etched with runes, air humming with harmonic resonance. Lyran greeted them, her robes flowing, flanked by two Klytheran guards whose golden eyes assessed Elias warily. "Welcome," she said, her gaze lingering on Aelira. "She's remarkable." Sylvara's emerald skin flushed, her maternal pride fierce. "She's ours," she said, her tone a quiet challenge. Elias stood close, his hand near his sidearm, his protective instinct palpable. Lyran led them to a private chamber, its viewport framing the nebula's swirling beauty. "The Concord opposes the Council's militarism," she explained, her voice steady. "But the Alliance and Klytheran retrieval teams are converging. You must decide, stay under our protection or seek your own path." Elias's brow furrowed, his tactical mind weighing the risks. "Protection sounds like a leash," he said. "What's the catch?" Lyran's lips curved, a hint of respect in her eyes. "No catch, but a request. Aelira's existence could sway neutral worlds to our cause. Peace through unity, not war." Sylvara's hand tightened on Aelira's harness, her Klytheran diplomacy surfacing. "She's not a symbol," she said. "She's a child." Lyran nodded, unoffended. "Then choose as parents, not pawns." The chamber's peace was shattered by a sudden alarm, the platform's lights flashing red. Lyran's comm buzzed, a guard's voice urgent. Terran stealth ship detected. Alliance signature. They're jamming our defenses. Elias's hand went to his sidearm, his human ingenuity kicking in. They tracked us, he said, his tone grim. The pod's beacon. Kaylee's must have planted a secondary signal. Sylvara's golden eyes narrowed, her warrior's spirit flaring. We're not trapped yet. Lyran's calm held, but her guards tensed. Our ship can engage, she said, but evacuation is wiser. She gestured to a hidden panel, revealing a smaller stealth pod. This will take you to the outer rim, untraceable. Elias's mind raced, spotting a flaw. The Alliance will intercept unless we misdirect them. He pulled a data crystal for his vest, a backup of the outpost's decoy protocols. We broadcast a false trail, make them chase ghosts. Sylvara's lips curved, admiration clear. You never stop, do you? She said, her voice warm despite the danger. Elias grinned, his stubble catching the light. Not when it's for you two. He worked the platform's console, uploading the decoy signal, while Sylvara secured Aelira in the new pod, her emerald hands gentle but swift. Lyran provided a data crystal of her own, new identities, credits, and coordinates to rim colonies. For your freedom, she said, her golden eyes sincere. The platform shook, Alliance drones breaching the outer shields. Lyran's guards ushered them to the pod, but a hologram flickered. Kaylee's, his sapphire skin stark, his voice cold. You can't run, Sylvara, he said. Aelira belongs to the council. Sylvara's blade hummed, her defiance blazing. She belongs to us, she snapped, cutting the transmission. Elias sealed the pod, his hand steady. Let's go, he said, launching them into the nebula's depths, the decoy signal scattering the Alliance's pursuit. The stars blurred, the rim's promise ahead. Sylvara cradled Aelira, her gold-flecked eyes stirring, and felt Elias's hand on hers. We're fugitives now, he said, his tone light but resolute. Sylvara's emerald skin warmed, her heart steady. We're family, she corrected, their binding a melody that defied the galaxy's reach. The stealth pod hummed through the Vidian Nebula's outer fringes, its Klytheran cloaking tech weaving a shroud of silence around it. Stars glimmered faintly through the viewport, their light a quiet promise of freedom beyond the reach of empires. Elias Vark sat at the controls, his dark eyes scanning the console for any trace of pursuit. His shirt was tattered, his stubbled jaw set with a weary but unbroken resolve. Sylvara cradled Aelira in the co-pilot seat, her emerald skin glowing softly under the pod's runes, her midnight blue braids framing a face softened by love. Aelira's silver-blue hair caught the starlight, her gold-flecked eyes blinking with newborn curiosity, a hybrid bridge between their worlds. The stabilizer's vials, secured in Sylvara's harness, pulsed faintly, their purpose now a choice rather than a mandate. We're clear, Elias said, his baritone low, a note of relief breaking through. The Alliance's retrieval teams, misled by the decoy signal, were light years off course, and the Draxians had retreated under the Concord's fire. Sylvara's golden eyes met his, a smile curving her lips. You did it, she said, her melodic voice warm. Again, Elias's lips twitched, his human defiance softened by her gaze. We did it, he corrected, his hand brushing hers, the binding's melody a silent pulse between them. The pod's NAV system pinged, displaying coordinates from Lyran's data crystal, a remote colony in the outer rim, Haven's Reach, a haven for those fleeing galactic powers. Neutral, self-sustaining, Elias read, his tactical mind assessing. No Alliance or Klytheran presence. Sound like a start. Sylvara nodded, her Klytheran diplomacy tempered by hope. A place to raise her, she said, her hand resting on Aelira, who cooed softly, her tiny fingers curling around Sylvara's braid. The journey stretched, the nebula fading behind them as the rim's sparse stars came into view. Sylvara fed Aelira with a nutrient pack from the pod supplies, her maternal instincts instinctual despite the accelerated birth. Elias watched, his heart shifting with a love he hadn't known was possible. She's got your eyes, he said, his voice thick. Sylvara's emerald skin flushed, her gaze teasing. And your stubborn chin. Their laughter, soft but genuine, filled the pod, a defiance of the chaos they'd left behind. But the console's faint alert broke the moment. A coded signal, buried in Lyran's crystal, marked urgent. Sylvara decrypted it, her golden eyes narrowing. "It's a warning," she said. "The Council's disavowed Kaylee's, but his faction's gone rogue. They're hunting hybrids, us." Elias's jaw tightened, his protective instinct flaring. "Let them try," he said, his tone cold. "They'll find out humans don't roll over." Sylvara's hand found his, her warmth grounding them both. "Nor Klytheran's," she added, her warrior's spirit unbroken. The signal included a Concord contact, a covert network for hybrid families, offering support but no guarantees. "We're not alone," Sylvara said, her voice steady. "Others are out there, fighting the same fight." Elias nodded, his human ingenuity already planning. "We settle, we build, we protect. If they come, we're ready." Haven's Reach appeared on the viewport, a dusty planet with green valleys cradled by rugged peaks. The pod descended, its cloaking disengaging as they landed in a quiet clearing, the colony's lights twinkling in the distance. The air was crisp, scented with alien flora, and Sylvara stepped out, Aelira cradled against her, her emerald skin catching the planet's twin moons. Elias followed, his boots crunching on the soil, his sidearm holstered but ready. "Home," he said, testing the word, his dark eyes warm. A local approached, a human Klytheran hybrid elder, her skin a mottled jade, her eyes gold-flecked like Aelira's. "Welcome to Haven," she said, her voice kind. "You're safe here." She offered a dwelling, simple but sturdy, and resources to start anew. Sylvara's diplomacy surfaced, her questions sharp but hopeful, securing their place. Elias's trust was cautious, but the elder's sincerity and the sight of other hybrid children playing nearby eased his guard. They settled into the dwelling, its walls woven with Klytheran fibers, its windows framing the valley. Sylvara laid Aelira in a cradle crafted by the colony, her daughters breathing a soft rhythm. Elias stood behind her, his arms around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "We made it," he whispered, his breath warm against her braids. Sylvara leaned into him, her emerald skin glowing. "We're free," she said, her voice a melody of hope. The stars above Haven's Reach shone bright, untainted by the Council's reach. Kaylee's rogue faction loomed as a distant threat, but Elias's defiance and Sylvara's strength were a shield no enemy could pierce. Aelira's existence, a harmony of human and Klytheran, was their rebellion, a family forged not by design, but by love. As dawn broke, painting the valley gold, they faced the future, together, their bond a beacon that outshone the stars.